we've seen it all. And I think you probably have as well. Anybody who's been doing it long enough. So we've been sued by somebody who tripped and fell on a ambulance chaser. We've had a house burned down. We've had somebody die in a place. I mean, we've had drugs, we've had everything. So we've had all those kind of challenges per se, but that's real estate. Welcome
Hey
to it.
there, I am Dr. Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why? Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today, I'm here with Ross MacArthur. Ross has spent 15 years building, contributing, and working for software companies, ranging from startups to Fortune 500 companies. He was an executive, but decided he wanted to build something bigger for himself and his family. Real estate called in January of 2020. You started real estate investing story. I'm gonna stop, Ross, because I think these stories are so much better told by the people that lived them rather than me trying to make it sound good. I think it's going to be great hearing it from you. So, but first, I just want to say thank you. Thanks for coming on the show today.
No, I appreciate it. So obviously, a friend of a friend referred us together, which is always cool. So I started doing some homework on the podcast, and I told you this before we came on, but I think it's a nice twist. There's a lot of podcasts out there, there's a lot of content, but I think you take a different look at it, and you really focus on people's passions, mindset stuff, and that stuff that every podcast you can take a little nugget out of, and I think that's our goal today. So I appreciate the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It to me, it's about the story. It's about the story. It's about why people are doing this, what, kind of what keeps driving them. So, with that, let's hear your story. Let's talk about, kind of your background and then what brought you into real estate and what you've been doing.
So I always joke it's I'm almost 40, so there's a few stories that you could fit into a few minutes here this morning. So I'll try to keep it pretty high level. But like you said, I grew up in the Midwest. I actually grew up in Michigan, so that will make a little more sense later. But I grew up in Michigan, born and raised, and after school, decided to jump into corporate America. But that there was always this passion of real estate, essentially since I was 16 years old. But you gotta growing up in the Midwest, growing up in the household, we had everything we needed, but we weren't investors. My family just, they had normal jobs. And so owning more than one house just kind of seemed untouchable, if I'm being perfectly honest. So I went corporate America route like we do. We work till we retire. And so I moved all over the country. Worked my way up from field sales and software to executive roles. But that dying kind of, I guess, itch or passion around real estate just kind of stood in the back of my head. But you travel quite a bit as well, and you have a lot of windshield time. And so 2023, well, really back then it was, late 2018, 2019. There's a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of educational books out there that you can listen to. So I just started listening to everything I could, like we all do. Started digesting as much information as I could, and then slowly but surely started working on my life or my wife, as we all have to with our partners. Start dropping those little ideas into her head.
Yeah.
This was right as things were starting to pick up in the economy too, and inflation was starting to happen. I kept telling my wife, I was like, I remember when somebody would say it would take $1 million to retire when I was in my 20s. Like that was the number. And now all of a sudden, as I'm getting in my 30s, that million becomes, I don't know, whatever number that you think, but it's more than that.
Right.
And so I decided I didn't want to work until I was 65. And my wife and I really determined that we wanted to take control of our destiny. And so in early 2020, January, we decided real estate was going to be the path to lowering our retirement age. And so after lots of research, we jumped into small multifamily. Like I said, a lot of people start there in the Midwest, mostly around cash flowing properties, 4 to 8 unit properties. And our first year goal was to buy 10 units. So our first property was a 4 unit property, 25% down, the scariest thing I've ever done. And you laugh now because we've all been there, right? Whatever the next thing you do is always the scariest. So that was super scary. We bought that property and it went pretty well. And I'm showing my wife, oh, look at, hey, we made a little bit of money. Yay. Right. Like I'm not an idiot. Like I promise. And so we're laughing and we're kind of going through it. And so then the next pitch is like, we need to do more. Right. And so, and that was when real estate was getting really, really hot as far as investment properties. It always has been, but that time was really getting hot. And people were buying properties sight unseen, cash. I felt like I was getting beat out on every deal I tried to go find. And so a good friend of ours talked to us about off-market marketing, direct-to-seller marketing. And so we created our own little marketing engine using some tools out there to get in front of sellers. And that worked really well. And our goal was to buy properties 25% discount. Simple goal. Meet our criteria, 25% off what we think it's worth. We went out, found a bank that would refinance us immediately. So we'd buy cash, refinance, get our capital out, and then we were able to rinse and repeat that. So all of a sudden, our goal of 10 properties year one, we were at 50. Excuse me, 50 units, I should say. That our goal for year two was 50 units. We ended up at 125. So things are going well. And as you know, when you start looking at off-market properties, some of the big, oh, I got this single family rental, and I'd be like, well, I don't really want that. That's not really, meets our criteria. We're really just multifamily. And a light bulb went off that, well, hold on, I'm passing up all these properties. Maybe there's a revenue stream here. And so I decided to start a flipping company, which also was the next scariest thing I've ever done. Got ripped off a couple times, learned many, many lessons in contractors, but we finally found a really good partner. And so we do about 30 flips a year in that business. And so things are going well. And that takes us up to January 2022. So that's about 2 years into our business. And a good friend and neighbor of ours, Stan Remling, lives literally a couple streets over from me. He was doing a lot of the same things with me, but on his own. And so we talked about real estate, and we one day had lunch and we were both saying, like, how do we get bigger? Everyone has this conversation about this time in their trajectory. Like, how do I get bigger? How do I go faster? And so, like everybody else, we went larger multifamily. So we decided to target 20 to 150 unit properties and started follow the deal investments. Originally, it was just for me and Stan. But then we started getting so many people asking us about investing and being a part of it. We decided to open it up to friends and family as well. It took us a little bit of time. So that takes us up to June and July/August 2023. And we finally got our first larger multifamily property under contract. And since then, you know how it is. When you get one, that's the hardest thing. And since then, we've done about 13 deals, one a month. And we just passed 700 units. So it's been a real wild ride. It's been a ton of fun, and we're enjoying it. And I should mention that, through all this, I'm kind of have a full-time job, like many of us do, right? I have a full-time job, and I'm burning the candle at both ends. And in March 2023, my wife mentioned to me, you got to stop. Like, you can't do both things. And so I started real estate full time at that point in time. I think I said 2023 was our first purchase in larger multifamily. I meant 2022. So, but yeah, it's been a wild ride, and I couldn't do it without the support of my wife, Kate, and of course my partner, Stan. So you know how it is. You're only as good as the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely, especially as the properties get bigger, you've got, higher number of units, the team becomes more and more and more important as you grow. You just can't grow and scale on your own. At some point there aren't enough hours in the day. So no, I love it. I think that sort of pathway, that story is not uncommon, but at the same time, like, everybody's experience in it is unique. And what you said about, sort of that first property, the 4 unit, that was, kind of the scariest thing you've ever done. I think that's it feels like when I talk to investors and things like that, whether active or passive, it's like the first one is so scary. And then it's kind of like you get in it and you're like, wait a minute, this is actually a good thing. Like, this is actually working. And you start to, I guess, drink the Kool-Aid, whatever you want to call it. But like, you just start to believe in it. And then you can take that, take those steps to grow further. And you said you left your W-2 job in just, I guess, in March of this year. You're keeping that, sort of safety net, I think is a smart thing. There's a lot of people that talk about, oh yeah, I'm doing this because I want to get out of my W-2 and all of that. And okay, fine. Like at some point you will probably have to, right? If you're as you experience, like if the real estate business scales in the way that you sort of expect it to and want it to, eventually you won't have the time and you'll kind of move away from your W-2 job. But like it doesn't have to happen right away. And in fact, it probably shouldn't happen right away. You use that as your kind of cushion, your nest egg, your safety net, whatever it is. But what did you, so when you got the first property, were you self-managing these? How did you and your wife kind of set up the structure of managing all of this and kind of while continuing to get more properties?
Yeah, so one of the things that you usually ask every guest is like best advice. So I'm gonna take one of those and I'm gonna insert it here, and we'll talk about some others later. But we did not from day one. I told my wife Kate that this is a business, and I don't care whether we buy one or 100. Like we are gonna treat it as a business. So I don't want to manage properties. Like my goal is not to take one job and then now add 15 other jobs on top of it of managing and doing bill pay and all these other things. So we went third party management right away. Day one, instantaneously. I highly suggest that everybody does that. That's just me. Like you said, everybody has different ways to look at things, but no, we went right to third party management, but we did use things like an accounting system, like Stessa is a real basic one that a lot of people use when they get started, low cost of entry. We tracked our bills. We had KPIs. We were inspecting what we expect from the property manager. So we did everything to treat it like a real business, not a hobby. There's actually a great quote, and I'm sure you've heard it, but if you treat your business like a business, it'll pay you like a business. If you treat a business like a hobby, it'll pay you like a hobby.
Yeah.
And so I'm a firm believer on creating a great foundation. So everything we did off the bat was about doing it like it was a business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great piece of advice and makes a lot of sense. The so sort of inserting third party management right off the bat is going to take it's going to give you back a lot of time, right? It's you've got to pay them. They've got some sort of percentage or whatever, however that structure is, but it's going to give you back a lot of time to sort of continue that growth trajectory that you were on. So after that, I mean, were you and your wife are working on this together, right? That they're like as
So I had kind of she's a doctor of audiology, so hearing aids, and works for a hearing aid manufacturer. So she has a full-time job. So her job was in our business was kind of like the bookkeeping side. So
okay.
she would bills and make sure things are paid. So everything else was me. And I think you bring up a good point. Like, I was trading, time for money, so I was paying a property manager. And you said to help kind of grow the business. So you're exactly right. So most of my effort was focused on direct to seller marketing early on, acquisitions, and then managing the manager property management side. So you're right. So I took whatever time I would have self-managed and I spent that on growth.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it. If you want to have a business, that's really what you've got to do. I'm a big talk about it on the show, but I'm a big fan of Who Not How, that book, because conceptually, it's so important when it comes to having a business and growing your business. And it's myself, I come from a very like DIY background. I just sort of that is my nature, and so it is something that I always have to sort of focus on and tell myself, look, do you have to be doing this part? Is there someone who can do that? If there isn't someone in the business yet, like, is that the next hire, that kind of thing? And I think I have seen, from the people I've interviewed on the show, mentors I've had, like the people that are most successful and generally the quickest are people that treat it just like you did, where they from day one, this is a business. I'm gonna treat it like a business. I'm gonna hire the right people, have that sort of infrastructure in place from the beginning, because one, it helps you grow faster. Two, you don't have to like go back and put it in place later. Right.
Yeah.
So if you kind of do everything yourself and then, you're a few years in and suddenly you're like, you know what, now I have to bring in all these people and systems and stuff. It's harder to implement it as you are in everything. Like you don't necessarily have the time to stop your business now and go back and put all of those systems and people in place. So I think it's just a great lesson, and you're a great example of how to kind of start that process right in the beginning. As you were growing and acquiring properties and things like that, what challenges did you come up against, with your growth? With again, I love that you started, sort of focusing it on it as a business, but what challenges came up for you?
I mean, we've seen it all. Actually, my wife is, so I try to give her things that she could have some outlet to within the business that she enjoys. So she's actually handling a lot of my LinkedIn stuff right now, just because. And so I always give her like post ideas, and that's one of the posts, like all the things that have gone wrong in real estate, which is brutal. So I mean, we've seen it all, and I think you probably have as well. Anybody who's been doing it long enough. So we've been sued by somebody who tripped and fell on an ambulance chaser. We've had a house burned down. We've had somebody die in a place. I mean, we've had drugs, we've had everything. So we've had all those kind of challenges per se, but that's real estate. Welcome to it. I think operationally, business is business, and it comes down to people, process, technology. Like I think every business, no matter what you do, it's those three things. So the number one issue is always people. Once you find the right people and the right partners, it becomes a lot better, right? And helps your processes. So one of the biggest challenges I think is twofold. One is repairs, right? Finding people to do the work that you can trust at a fair rate. We've been ripped off. You've probably been ripped off. I know everyone I've talked to has been ripped off at some point in time of a guy that thinks he can do it all at a fair rate. And next thing you know, it's either shoddy work, never done, he stole money from you. So that has been a huge challenge and still is. You think at 700 units or 1,000 units or 2,000 units in somewhat of a concentrated market that it would become easier. It's always a problem. So when you find a good one, hang on to them, treat them right. The second one is management. I think that's, third party management is a blessing and a curse. So a lot of the properties we buy, if we can have some dedicated management, but we've had to use a lot of third parties. And let's just be honest, third parties, you're getting back your time, but you're getting a product back or a service back that's probably not quite as good as you would expect it to be, no matter what. And so those are two challenges, and I think we will always have those challenges. But having the right processes and inspecting what we expect from all aspects of it eliminates that to a certain aspect, but you're always going to have that. And that's been our struggle, and I think will always be our struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked about, kind of the importance of team and partnerships and all of that. And it's like the management, the property management and the construction, those, especially if you're, sort of in a value add position, those particular partners, those particular vendors are incredibly important and can be challenging to manage. I mean, that's the reality. It's you can, because the thing is, like, you can put all the systems and processes and things like that in place that you have in your business, but probably your contractor doesn't have those, right? Like your contractor doesn't have those systems. It's like even your third party management, you've got to find the right one that, like, their systems gel with your system. I mean, it's part of the business, it's part of real estate, as you said, sort of welcome to real estate. I will say the first time I ever got the call that someone was shot on a property, it was just like, it wasn't even something I had like considered. I should have, I guess, but it was just something that I hadn't even considered, and was like sort of devastated, like, oh God, what do we do? And everybody else, the property management was like, oh, we've filed a report, blah blah blah, like that's it, like that's it, and that is it, like that's, and it's just kind of you learn what what to worry about and what not necessarily to worry about as part of the process. So it's just the points you brought up. I think are great ones in terms of, people. Those are going to be the biggest challenges, because you can put everything into a system on a spreadsheet, into, use all of the technology with Asana and Slack, and there's all kinds of project management platforms available for you. But at the end of the day, you've got to be able to talk to people. And a lot of times the way that you might talk or interact with, say, your construction contractors versus the way you might interact with an investor or things like that. Like I feel like that's one of the biggest skills in multifamily, is being able to bridge that gap and be the connector and the communicator.
Yeah, no, I think you're dead on. And the last kind of point on that, if you haven't seen those things, you haven't been doing it long enough. So just be ready. And everything is, there's that book, and everything's figure outable, and that's there's no true statement. Like there's nothing that won't be figured out. And like you
Yeah.
said, you pretty start to figure out what's actually you need to worry about, what things you can kind of just
Yeah.
brush right by.
Yeah. Yeah. And this maybe comes from my surgery world, but panic doesn't help anything. There's no there's no freaking out, panicking, sort of reacting in a sort of unstable situation. It just doesn't help anything. So
Nerves of steel, I'm sure.
it's people do mention my calmness. I'm like, well, it really just doesn't help. Like when I see people get, panic, I'm like, just that's not going to help anything right now. But so I love the, sort of these points, and the people are the most important part of this. As you've grown and you've gone from, kind of the smaller multifamily, and now you said, sort of closing a deal a month, and I think some people are going to be like active investors are going to be surprised by that right now in the current environment, because I think that, a lot of people's deal flow are down, that sort of thing. But I think what you brought up about, starting the flipping company because you felt you were missing opportunities that were coming across, like the that's being an investor, that's being an entrepreneur, and you can keep that all within the real estate space by flipping those houses, by sort of finding different ways to I guess just be open-minded to opportunities. And the idea is to ultimately to grow the business, make money, support employees, that kind of thing. And so you do what you need to do to pivot when you have to.
100%. Yeah. So I get that question a lot though. Like, all right, so how are you still at one? We're in the Midwest. So let's be honest, right? We're not in Dallas. And we're in tertiary markets. So, we're not, I live in Orlando, Florida area. Like, good luck buying something down here that actually makes money, and you don't have to bring 50%, down. We've looked at a lot of deals down here. It's just tough, right? And so, but the Midwest is, it's still a lower cost of entry, and there's still deals to be had. So one of the pivot points is, you read all the books about, well, population growth and all that. I think we're in an affordable housing crisis now and for the future. I was actually just at a veterinarian for my dog this morning, and the text, that's what they were talking about. They're like, man, people's taxes are doubling right now. Like, people can't afford it. And then where are they supposed to go? They have apartments that are $3,600 a month. Like, people are just getting priced out of the market. Well, these tertiary markets there's a lot of great blue collar towns and markets and blue collar workers that we can still create some pretty good affordable living at some decent rent rates in cash flow. And so we've kind of pivoted to saying, like, we're okay with these smaller markets as long as it meets all the criteria, and we're not looking for big appreciation. We're just looking at, obviously NOI increases, which increases value, but not organic appreciation. Forced appreciation. So, to your point, I think where people start in business and where they end, it's not a straight line, right? It is very curvy. And so, we kind of did that with the flipping business. We've done that with the getting out of the small multifamily into the larger stuff. And we've even done that with the type of assets that we buy. So, I think if you want to continue to grow, you have to kind of, I guess you, not kind of, you have to be mindful that you may have to alternate your strategy a little bit. So I think that's a great point. And I'm sure in your guys' business, you've done a lot of those things over the years as well.
Yeah. Pivoting is it. So I think the pivot is in search of more opportunities, right? So deal flow goes down. Okay, what am I going to do to sort of bring more deal flow, create more opportunities, have ways to, sort of uh, grow investments for our investors. But I think one thing in specifically with, kind of your strategy here, where if you're going, you were small multi, and now you said, I think you said 20 to 150 units is, yeah. And so I think 150, that's starting to get into like the big multifamily, I guess. There's obviously you can get hundreds of units, but like that mid-size is probably a really great opportunity right now, because you a lot of the bigger properties are going to have traded, you know, with brokers. They're being bought by large firms, that kind of thing. But some of those mid-size properties are probably still owned by like mom and pop, like the original people that bought it. And so what they're looking for in an exit is going to be very different than what, like if you're buying from a large syndication firm or family office, or so, something big. They've got different ideas of what their exit strategy was. So if you're marketing direct to seller and you're doing, kind of getting these off market, that to me, that is like a great opportunity right now and a great space to be in, given, kind of the challenges at other levels, and allows you to kind of grow your portfolio faster if you're, taking bigger chunks.
Yeah, there's definitely kind of two sides of that. So you're right. We kind of call those the baby boomer, landlords. And a
Yeah.
good friend of ours, James, he talks about right now, and he's a serial entrepreneur. He's got 5 or 6 different businesses, and he wants to start a business that solely focuses on buying baby boomer businesses.
Yeah.
Because to all industries, but kind of to your point is, there's, that operationally they may not be run as well. So I think there's kind of two sides of it in 2023. There's no doubt the thing that you mentioned, their expectations may not be as high, and their exit doesn't have to be as high because their entry was so low. So there's that factor. But then the second factor is kind of interesting too. Outside of them, there's a lot of people that treated this business as a hobby. And even though they maybe bought it 3 or 4 years ago, they went in, they bought their one property or their two properties, and they ran it awfully. Like they just did not run it well. So I think, not only do you have the legacy owners, but then you also have these people who have inefficiencies in operations, and that allows you to buy it at a discount as well. So there's kind of those two areas are the ones that we're really focused on for sure. I think a lot of people can be.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great point. I think there's the long-term owners, and the long-term owners also probably present the added potential opportunity of seller financing, or so, being able to get very creative with the financing in some way. And you mentioned that your friend that's buying business. That's exactly what, we're doing that within our fund right now. We're buying multifamily real estate, but we're layering that with small businesses, because there is a lot of opportunity there. You mentioned the baby boomers, like it's just being aware of kind of shifts in demographics, shifts in the market, whatever it is, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is, especially as a syndication company, the number one goal is to make money for the investors, right? And
Yeah.
so if right now that's challenging to do in large multifamily, then okay, let's figure out how we can do it and still provide that level of return and service that we want to for them. So yeah, I think these are all great points. Ross, I'm gonna change gears here so we can get to, I know you answered one of the questions, but I'm still going to ask you, make you give us another piece of advice. Uh, but the first one is always based on the name of the show. What is your why? what's driving you? Obviously, having a lot of success, which is awesome. But what's the story behind that?
Yeah, so I think the easy one that we all say is family. I see dad behind you and the handprints and things like that. I mean, I'm no different. So I think we can almost like say, yes, okay, let's move that one to the side. That's a major one for everybody, I think. But when you're in the corporate ladder and you're climbing, if you're decent at your job or good at your job, there's always going to be kind of the next challenge in front of you. And I was going through that over my career. So I'd do something really well for a year or two, and then I'd get another company to run or another division to run. And what I always feel like in jobs is year one is you're drinking from a fire hose. Year two, things start to become easier. You become a little proficient. Year three, you're on autopilot. Like you can do the job with your eyes
Mhm.
closed. I was getting a new position every 2 years or less. And so I never got to that very comfortable stage of like, I don't have to be grinding it out the amount of hours that I am. I just saw no end to the light or no end in sight. So that's what really was one of the other factors of pushing us to real estate, along with the retirement age that we talked about before. Outside of that, I think the big thing was I had an aha moment where I felt like I was, going to put 110% into anything I did. So I was thinking back, like 16 years old, I'm working at a fast food joint. I was going to be the best dang fast food worker you could ever imagine. Like, did not matter. Field sales rep, entry level job. I was going to be the best at that role. And so I one day had this aha moment that I'm like, all right, well, I'm doing this for somebody else. I'm putting 110% into it. Like, I'm sick of making other people rich. Like, it's time to make my family rich. And so that was kind of the final straw to the camel's back that pushed me into this full time. Was like I'm sick of making putting in all this time and effort and making somebody else a lot of money. So it's probably not an answer you get often on the last thing, but that's the truth. Like it's time to
Yeah,
put my effort into something that's
yeah.
going to actually pay off for my family.
I 100% agree, and I love the way that you put it. I'm actually really the 3 year thing. So what you say, kind of that's like when you get onto autopilot, and it's interesting because I have felt that. Like I have thought to myself before, like when I would be in a new position, and like as a surgeon, new position, new hospital, it was year three when you really got like just in the groove. Your caseload would be up, clients were trusting you, like all the things. And so it's interesting to me to hear that sort of maybe 3 year thing applies to other businesses as well. But what what I found too is once you get into that, where it's like kind of easy groove, that sort of thing, then you stop feeling that growth. And I feel like as an entrepreneurial person, I think a lot of people in the real estate space probably feel this way, like you want to be pushed. And so I think that's probably a reason why sometimes people don't stay in jobs for like long term. They want to be pushed. So if they're not either moving to a new position or what, like you're not experiencing that growth. And I think that's a big part of like personal fulfillment. But you're 100% right. Like, why not do that for yourself and your family?
Yeah,
Why?
I'd rather self the challenge, right? I'll go
Right.
find the next myself. But you're right.
Exactly.
Right, when you take on something different, that's why you're working so hard, is you're learning it, right? You're learning how to handle that role and responsibility. I'm sure with your baby boomer businesses you're buying, each one of those is kind of a micro of that change that we were just talking about. You have to learn that business,
Yeah. Yeah.
pushes you, challenges you.
You find the operator. Again, it's like it's the same thing as real estate, right? Every real estate deal is a business basically, and you're finding your third party property management. That's your operator, but you still have to manage them. You have to learn, how does this property operate, how does this asset class operate, how does this business operate. A lot of it's the same. Financials are the same, profit and loss statement are the same. Like you probably just have different KPIs and markers of success. Like that's really what it comes down to. And again, it's if you can manage the people, that's it. It's always a people business. It's a people business, it's a people business in real estate. It's a people business in being a veterinarian is you have clients, right? It's a people business. You have clients and you have the people you work with. It's always about people. It doesn't matter how good the technology is, you've got to have the ability to sort of communicate with them. Next question for you. Tell us something about yourself that isn't common knowledge. Special skill, a hobby, just something to let listeners know you better.
Yeah, so I was talking to my wife about this morning. I was like, what should I say? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm just kind of an everyday guy. But then I started thinking about like, so I'm very active. I feel like you just have to be for a lot of reasons. But I run 3 to 5 days a week and some other stuff I do. But I hate being called a runner. So I run 3 to 5 days a week. I've
Yeah.
done, we do a half marathon together, my wife and I, every year in January at the Disney half marathon. So usually people run like a half. They're like, oh, they're mega runners. Like I do it for complete different reasons than you think. It is like a lot of people see therapists, a lot of people have somebody to talk to. I do it for mental health.
Yeah.
It is 100% therapy. I have two buddies I run with. Uh, and we honestly BS the entire time. We talk about our lives, what's work going on. And then the other thing is that morning fresh air outside is just good for your soul. I don't care what anybody says. Like that fresh air, we get stuck behind a desk all day, and you all of a sudden realize it's 8 a.m. and then it's 5 p.m. and you haven't moved. And so I do my best thinking just out jogging. And so I'll come back, I'll write a bunch of stuff down that I thought about. I'll voice the text if I have my phone on me. Like I'll send myself emails, like all these different things while I run. And for me, it starts my day off right. And a lot of people just think I do it for exercise, but there's like 100 other reasons why I do it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. For me, well, I mean, exercise, I love, kind of what it does for your physical health, but it's probably more important what it does for my mental health. Like, and it's just when I don't exercise, like it's like I just become a different person. I get very that patience, that the patience and the calm that we talked about is not as easy to maintain then. So I totally get it.
So I can eat and drink too, because I love local food. So there's
Yeah,
this,
yeah, yeah. It's that my someone
but
got me once a sticker and it said something like I work out so I can eat cookies or something like just something that to that effect. Ross, when people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
So I'm not crazy on social media, but we have our website followthedeal.com and most active really on LinkedIn. So if y'all want to connect, feel free to message me there. I'm pretty good at answering within a day. But either way, love to talk to people. But more than anything, I love what you're doing, and of course the message you're putting out there. Real estate and business and being an entrepreneur, I think, is incredible for people, and I think our kids and our family members need to learn more about it and be taught that at an early age. And I think, yeah, that's a lot of what you talk about. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. Appreciate you saying that. All right, I told you I was going to make you do it again, but another piece of advice for someone starting in real estate. The other one was great, but here's it's always good to end on a high note.
Yeah, so I got two, and one of them was actually given to me at a really young age. So 22 years old, a sales rep, and I think at the time he was 65 years old, so big age gap there. And he came, our VP of sales came out in front of us, and he gave this big rah rah speech. But one of the things that he said, I think, and I tell when I was in my W-2 job, and people would ask me that, I'd give them this advice as well. I'd always say, stay focused and have a plan. Like, yeah, right, given. But the biggest thing that he always says, if you don't have a plan, you might as well go back to bed. You already lost the day. And that has stuck out with me, whether it's personal, financial, business, doesn't matter. If you're waking up not knowing what you're trying to accomplish that day, then you lost. So that's one. And I think that's in any aspect of your life. And the other one, I've personally struggled with is the shiny object syndrome and envy. There is, especially in this industry, there is a lot of big players in this industry that beat their chest, and some of them have every right to beat their chest, right? Yeah, I mean, these guys are mega superstars in what they do and leaders. But there's just a lot of social media presences and people trying to convince you to do certain things or act a certain way, or maybe you want to try to grow to their size or be a part of this thing. Envy and shiny object syndrome is real. It's real in everything we do. And I think the biggest struggle for anybody as an entrepreneur is kind of tuning that out and stay focused and your head down, because one day you'll just wake up and you'll you'll have to pause for a second and reflect on what you accomplished for that moment, because it'll be really good. But if you start listening to outside resources, you start getting into envy, wish I could do more like them. It's going to take you off your spot, and you'll probably derail eventually. So
Yeah.
those are two to end on a high note, hopefully a high note, not a depressing note, but those are two that, I mean, I personally struggle with and personally try to deal with every day.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think, and the thing is, social media is a great platform if used appropriately, but if you're not, if you are looking at it from exactly like, if you're going on social media and you're looking at it from a shiny object syndrome or envy, like you mentioned, you're just going to hold yourself back, because like people are showing the wins. They're showing the wins. They're not showing all the hard stuff. It's not like,
I'm not telling you about the guy that got shot in his apartment.
right, yeah, well, it's like when, like, I have put this out on social media now, but like when I went through something last year, we had a deal fall apart, lost my earnest money. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the first person to ever like have this happen. And it's like I started calling people mentors, like everybody was like, oh no, this has happened to all of us. Like it was like, why doesn't anybody talk about that? Like what? Like,
There you did, and you did last year too. So keep talking about the bad stuff too,
yeah,
right?
it's just, I mean, it's just, I think if it's, I don't know, maybe it's therapeutic for me, but I also feel like it's like someone who's coming up in the business, not like I'm like far ahead of anyone, but like someone coming up in the business, that's business. And I like, I love Alex and Layla Harmozy in large part because they will put out the struggle points. They will say like, this is what, Alex talks about it all the time. Like, I lost all the money this time. A year later, I lost all the money again. Like, it's like, and then they tell you how they fix it. And it's like, that's what I want. Like, I always, this is like in every aspect of life. I'm like, don't come to me with the problem. Come to me with the problem and how we're going to fix it.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, that's okay. Problems are going to happen. Stuff is going to happen. Like, that's life. That's business. Like, we talked about that. We both have young kids. They're gonna drop stuff. They're gonna break it. They're gonna spill things. Like, okay, we just clean it up. That's it. Like, there's we don't have to have like a crazy event about this. Like, we just fix it. Like, nobody, it's just kind of I think your point obviously means a lot to me, because I think that's an easy thing to do. That's an easy thing to see, kind of everybody's highlight reel and be like, it's like, here's a sports analogy. I'm from New England. I'm a huge Tom Brady fan. I have Patriots season tickets. Like, everybody knows Tom Brady has won 7 Super Bowls. Most people don't know about all the games that like he lost, or things like you don't think about that, but you don't like watch Tom Brady's highlight reel and think I should be Tom Brady.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Don't watch Grant Cardone's videos and be like, I should be Grant Cardone right now. Like, go find out all the stuff that went wrong for him in the past. Like, it's just kind of I think a perspective, right? Perspective on what to really take away from what you see in kind of the social media aspect. So but Ross, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you taking the time today and sharing your story. I think people are going to get a lot out of it. So thank you very much.
Hey, no, I appreciate it. And again, thanks for everything you do. I appreciate the invite.
Thank you. Folks listening, I know you're going to love this episode. Please like, rate, review the show so we can get more great guests like Ross. And thank you all for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?